Hey yo, what's good everyone? Twisted here with Open Sorcery, and today I want to go ahead and talk about flexibility and adaptation, and pretty much embodying these aspects. Now, in short, what exactly are they? Pretty much it is a trait, it's a capability of being able to go ahead and change, or go along with a phenomenon known as change, which in our human language, honestly, you can't really describe all too well or the best because it is limited and does not capture the full scope of it. However, there have been quite a few instances at the Open Sorcery here that we've gone ahead and touched upon the nature of change or things associated with change. So I'll go ahead and point you to 3 of these instances where we've gone ahead and done so for you to listen to at your leisure and all that. So, the first one is impermanence, change, and maximum weirdness, which I discussed along with our previous co-host Devi, and also our frequent guest and friend Y-King. Also, there is the talk about the divination system known as the I Ching, the Book of Changes, which was also a conversation between Devi and I. And finally, contemplating change, which was a prompt for shadow work that Devi went ahead and did a little while back. So, in that regard, let's go ahead and talk about flexibility and adaptation, right? So when you think of adaptation, you may go ahead and think of evolution quite a bit in terms of associated terminology. And that's because, if you're part of the American education system, you likely heard about it in science class at some point. And that's due to an individual known as Charles Darwin, who came up with a theory that promoted these concepts, or shall I say, the concepts that were dubbed natural selection and survival of the fittest, within primarily a physical, material, and biological lens. Now, this idea does align with abstract, my apologies for that flub, does align with abstract concepts as well, including memes and the science of memetics, and that's something previously that has been gone ahead and discussed here in regards to meme magic, so I will put that link in the YouTube posting of this as well. So, that being said, most importantly though, this applies to our mental, emotional, and spiritual growth within this lifetime, but across the various lives that you've lived or have yet to experience within the reincarnation cycles and however long you're meant to go ahead and actually go through them. Now, when it comes to being able to be flexible, being able to change, to be adaptable, to go with the flow essentially, this brings up a sort of theme within the realm of astrology for those who happen to be interested in or follow that, or if you have a curiosity but have not dived into it. And the reason why I go ahead and interrelate to it is because the concept of mutability or changeability and such, and is a synonym to flexibility and adaptation or adaptability. My apologies for mispronunciation, going ahead and messing up, but the zodiac signs that are associated with this, in their general themes are Gemini, which is the air sign, Virgo, which is the earth sign, Sagittarius, which is a fire sign, and Pisces, which is a water sign. Now, in thinking about that, right, like, you think about all these different signs and what they embody. So Gemini happens to be, the twins, and being able to shift back and forth between 2 individuals, or personified as 2 individuals, but it kind of means more so like 2 sides of a coin, right? Now Virgo itself, if we're going to go ahead and think of the concept of earth and that being firm and being dense and strong, or able to go ahead and be still or stagnant to whatever degree, for good or bad, Virgo is the least the least staying put, to put it like that, of the earth signs. Sagittarius, that sign in of itself relates to going ahead, and the fire itself is more so of a moving flame. It's not necessarily staying stagnant on, like, say, a candle or in a fireplace. Like, this is a flame that's traveling. It's going ahead and it's moving around. It's spreading. It has a lust for knowledge, for being able to go ahead and, travel and learn and experience. So that is what the sign of Sagittarius happens to go along with. And then, of course, we come to Pisces. So what this sign generally is associated with and embodies are fish. So the fish swim along, whether it is in the sign depiction of Pisces and two fish going ahead and swimming in relation to each other, cyclically, circally, and all that, and me going ahead and, like, not being sure if I pronounced it correctly or not, but in any case, going ahead and thinking about that, or just the nature of fish swimming in the sea overall, and how they do so, and they ride the currents. They ride the currents of the ocean, or wherever they may happen to be, a lake, a river, a stream, so on, so be it, right? Now, going ahead and thinking about these archetypes, or these zodiac signs, right? You can also look at the tarot and the minor arcana within the tarot, and all the different cards that, embody different concepts or archetypal things or anything like that. The one that comes to mind for me in relation to flexibility and adaptation is, and funny enough, it's an earth sign, or an earth card, in the suit of Pentacles, the Two of Pentacles. The reason why this comes up to me in association with this concept of flexibility and adaptation is because the symbolism in regards to the card showcases a man juggling two big old discs, two big old coins, right? Or at least in tarot terminology, right? Of alternatively, aside from calling it pentacles, depending on what sort of deck you're using and whatever themes are. But yes, so the Two of Pentacles, he is juggling two different things itself, very well, and has the choice, has the ability to go with one or the other, or just keep flowing between them and waiting until the proper choice arrives in that case, or just continually still being in the state of that right there. And funny enough, this makes me go ahead and think of a quote that, has been put out there, posted, reposted, put into books, and all of that by the famous philosopher, modern philosopher of Alan Watts. And I say modern as in, within the 20th century or up until today. And Alan Watts was quoted as saying, "The only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance." So, I'll go ahead and say that again. The only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. So, in doing that, right, being flexible, being adaptable, being able to go along with change, and essentially let change guide you. Ride that wave and all that. And when I say ride that wave, you can go ahead and use your imagination, use your mind's eye to think of the imagery of a surfer who is going ahead and riding atop that wave. That chaotic sort of thing that you don't know, if you go ahead and you mess up, you're going to go ahead and go under. If you're going ahead and riding the wave in terms of within the tunnel, or maybe you try to do it on top of it, or at least, if you've seen surfers or are aware of the concept in media portrayals, that you've seen, depictions of surfers atop of waves, hence ride the wave and all that, atop, on top of it or within it. So, that said, right? So, if you want to be flexible, you want to be adaptable, you have to know how to ride the waves that life goes ahead and sends in its ever continual movement. Or be like the fish and go ahead and, swim within the ocean, the currents that are there, and see where it takes you, where you are properly meant to go. And in that theme, these water-based themes, right? There's a great deal of water or aquatic-based entities that can serve the purpose of helping you become more flexible and adaptable by going with the flow, right? And I would say alternatively, like air would be a good choice as well. However, in truth though, none of the four elements of fire, air, water, or earth are necessarily the best to go ahead and interact with or embody change itself, because it's not that quantifiable. It is not that limited. Hence why it is change itself. It is less limited, unlimited, and so on. Now, if we're going to go ahead and go by the Western magical standard of things, which is by no means at all perfect, but if just as a, reference point, right? Then the most adaptable elements out of this, out of those available is the fifth, which is spirit. And pretty much that being something that could be it encapsulates all the other elements and is something of its own wholly and entirely by itself. And the thing about it is that with the spirit, that is more so of a pure essence that you're going ahead and dealing with, and less having to do with it having manifested in the material and the physical realm and all of that. However, as I went ahead and mentioned before, you could deal with quite a few water or aquatic based entities to help serve the purpose of becoming more adaptable, going with the flow, being more flexible, and all that. So I give some recommendations on that front. And these are entities that I've gone ahead and mentioned in previous instances since the open sorcery has begun. And in doing so, I recommend them again because in dealing with them, they have been reliable for me, and I'm working with my own base of experience to share with anyone who happens to be listening. So, the first one happens to be Archangel Amnitziel, who I have personally dubbed the Piscean Swiss Army knife. And that is another instance of having a monologue of talking about Amnitziel and them specifically. I'm going to go ahead and recommend that you go ahead and listen to the talk that I did on them however long ago. I'll put that link in the YouTube posting of this discussion, or shall I say monologue. And then Benzaiten, who is the Shinto goddess of flow, water, music, and various other things. And that is another goddess, that is another being who I've recommended, I should say. My apologies for all my mistakes and flubs. But a being that has been a good part of my repertoire, or shall I say, a good advisor or collaborator over time for me, and once again sharing it with others who may find benefit in working with them. So in that sort of regard, right, pretty much being able to be flexible, adaptable, being able to go along with change, embodying this for the sake of our own evolution, not just physically, not just in the Darwinian context that you may have been taught in school or exposed to. If you happen to be into science, the various sciences and all that sort of thing, before our mental growth, our emotional growth, spiritual growth, and so on and so forth. So, that having been said, I've run the gamut and gone ahead and messed up a little bit too much in terms of this particular topic right here, in terms of how I pronounce things or say things, but oh well, I'm going with it. I'm putting it out there. And with that having been said, this has been Twisted with the Open Sorcery, and stay frosty, Neguses. Peace.